Last time we looked at the strategy for when you make a hand on the flop. But what about if you nearly make a hand on the flop? That makes things a lot more complicated. Raise with your flush draw, call with your straight draw. Let's work it out.
There's no right or wrong way to play poker. There's not one method that will guarantee success, but there are ways and means for you to maximize your chances of winning. There are good habits and bad habits. There are situations to avoid and situations to seek. And there are those who have the knowledge to exploit them. We're going to teach you how to master the game, from the basics to the advanced.
Hello and welcome to Everything Poker. In Level 2, the experience level, so far we've covered betting and its purposes, we've looked at player styles and methods of gathering information. And in the last show, we focused on playing made hands. So naturally, now it's time to look at playing draws. There is a real science to playing draws, whether you're on a flush draw or a straight draw. It's a fine balance of risk and reward as you consider your options. This show looks at poker played all over the world. But today, we're off to Las Vegas for some action from the big game and to London for a hand from the European Poker Tour. We'll take a trip down memory lane with one of the game's finest ambassadors, leading lady Vicky Corrin, and we look at the rise of female participation and success in recent years. There'll be more in-depth analysis from 2005 World Series of Poker champion Joe Hasham, and we test the nerve of some familiar faces from the circuit. Should be fun. Let's kick off though, as always, with the first of today's tutorials.
In Texas Hold'em, you won't hit a made hand all that often on the flop. Most of the time, you'll miss it completely. For example, Ace-King is a premium hand before the flop, but if you don't hit an ace or king on the flop, it's certainly not as good anymore. Fortunately, there's a whole category of hands that are weak on the flop, but have the potential to improve to the best hand on the turn or river. These are called draws, and as with other kinds of poker hands, some are very strong and some are not. There are three types of draws: very strong draws, and weak draws. Let's first look at very strong draws. These occur when you can hit a straight or a flush on the turn or river card. In this example, you are holding Jack-10 of hearts, which with this flop gives you a flush draw worth 9 outs. Outs being cards which could be dealt that complete your draw. You also have an open-ended straight draw, meaning you can either hit a 7 or a queen to complete a straight. This gives you an additional 8 outs. Be careful when calculating the number of outs you have. Don't count the Queen of Hearts and the 7 of Hearts twice. So in total, you have 15 outs, which means you are very likely to hit your draw. Let's take a look at the percentages. 15 outs equates to a 56.3% chance of winning the hand, which beats the 43.7% of your opponent. So even against your opponent's strong made hand, top pair with top kicker, you are the favorite to win. Let's look at strong draws. These occur when you have either a straight draw or flush draw. Again, in this example, you have a flush draw, 2 hearts in your hand and 2 on the flop. The difference is, this time you do not have a straight draw to add to that, reducing your outs considerably. The 9 hearts remaining in the deck are your 9 outs. The 9 outs equate to a 36% chance of winning against your opponent, who again has top pair, top kicker. Here you have another strong draw. In this case, the open-ended straight draw. You need to hit a jack or a 6, meaning you have 8 outs to make your straight. This draw is not as good as a flush draw, as you have only 8 outs instead of the 9 you have with a flush draw. With an open-ended straight draw, you have a 34% chance of winning the hand. Lastly, we come to the weak draw. There are 2 main examples of weak draws. First, you have overcards, which look good because you have up to 6 cards that improve your hand. But you only improve to 1 pair, and your opponent could already have a strong hand, like 2 pair or a set. So even if you do hit one of your 6 outs, you could still be behind. Remember that. Finally, we have gut shot draws. Gut shot draws occur when you need one of 4 cards to make a straight. Here you need a 5. With just 4 outs, you only make your straight about 16% of the time, so you shouldn't really consider playing it.
So there are 3 kinds of drawing hand categories: very strong draws, which combine straight and flush draws; strong draws, which are flush or open-ended straight draws; and weak draws, which include overcards and gut shot draws. The stronger the draws are, the more aggressively you should play the hand. A lot to take in there, but it's all vital. Here's a tip from World Series of Poker champion Joe Hasham to explain what to be wary of once you've hit that draw.
Number 1 rule is you don't put too much money in with the bottom end of the straight, because somebody usually has got you dead and you're going to lose a lot of money. So play those hands really carefully. If the board reads 10, 9, 8, 7 and you've got a 6 in your hand and you get a lot of action, generally means that you'll beat. So avoid those hands.
Thanks, Joe. Now, there are 2 main ways of playing a draw. 1, slowly and modestly with a view to building the pot, or 2, aggressively with a view to making others fold. But if they don't fold, you'll still be in with a good shot at scooping the pot. It's a semi-bluff. You're kind of bluffing, kind of not. You kind of have a hand, you kind of don't. You kind of want a caller, kind of don't. Here's Christian with more.
When you have a draw on the flop, you need to know how to play it.
Daniel flops the World's Fair. He's got more outs than a baseball game.
Should you semi-bluff by betting or play more cautiously? There are 3 key points to consider before you make your decision. What was the pre-flop action? How many opponents are there? How strong is your draw? First, we'll look at the pre-flop action. If you were the pre-flop aggressor like Daniel Negreanu holding King-Jack in this hand, you now want to continue this aggression, so you should make a continuation bet, regardless of the strength of your hand. If your opponent misses the flop, they'll probably fold. If they call, you're also building the pot to a level that will be very profitable if you do hit your draw. If you weren't the aggressor and just called a raise pre-flop like Goodenvangen here holding Queen-Jack of Hearts, you should approach with a little more caution. If your opponent continuation bets, the best option is to call. Remember, you still don't have a made hand. We know that his opponent has 8-4, but he doesn't. Always be aware of the number of players in the hand. In principle, the higher the number, the tighter you should be. The more players there are, the smaller the chance a semi-bluff will win the pot. Plus, if you hit your draw against several opponents, you're more likely to win a big pot. Here, Craig Hopkins is up against 3 opponents and is holding Jack-10 of diamonds, giving him an open-ended straight draw. He wisely chooses to just call. The turn card completes Hopkins' straight. Unfortunately, there is always a chance that your opponent is holding exactly the same as you, like in this case, where Joseph Elpeya also makes the straight and splits the pot. With very strong draws, you generally want to play big pots. So if you're up against only 1 or 2 opponents and hit a combined straight and flush draw like Jason Mercier does here in the big game,
Jason's got a monster draw. We might see a semi-bluff.
it's a good play to bet or raise. If your opponent re-raises, don't be afraid to go all in.
On.
You can win the pot outright if the opponent folds, or if you get called,
Call.
you have a coin flip against most of your opponent's holdings. And we all like a coin flip when the pot is big.
All right, there we go.
Recap. Always bear those 3 points in mind: the pre-flop action, the number of opponents, and the strength of your draw. If you raised pre-flop, stay on the offensive. If you called, stay passive and call. If there are a lot of opponents in the hand, a semi-bluff isn't advisable. One of them will probably call you. And always remember just how strong your draw is. The stronger it is,
On.
the more aggressive you should be. Let's see an example of how a semi-bluff can be executed effectively as we open the vault. First up, we're in Vegas in the big game for a textbook example of the semi-bluff being used successfully. In this hand, Joe Carter raises with Queen Jack from the cutoff position, and the amateur player, Nadia Magnus, chooses to call from the small blind with Ace 10. After the big blind folds, the flop brings a 9-3 king, all hearts, and Nadia is first to act. She checks, and Carter, who's holding the worst hand at this point, with just Queen High, makes a bet. The bet is a semi-bluff, as although he has no made hand at this point, any heart gives him a flush, and any 10 gives him a straight. Nadia quickly folds, and Carter takes down the pot. Easy. Over to London now in Season 7 of the EPT, where Faza Bonyadi raises with a pair of 10s. Daniel Negreanu calls with Ace-Jack of clubs, and the aggressive Dario Mineri makes a re-raise from the button. After some careful consideration, both Bonyadi and Negreanu call. The flop comes 10-6 ace, which gives all the players a nice hand. The action is checked round to the pre-flop raiser Dario, who's made a pair of aces. He bets, and it's back with Bonyadi, who's made a set of 10s, way ahead in the hand at this point. Bonyadi makes a big raise on what looks like a very dangerous board, as he doesn't want to let his opponents see a cheap turn or river card. The action's back on Daniel, who has top pair and the nut flush draw. He must consider a few things before making his decision. Bonyadi has shown extreme strength after check-raising Minieri's bet, so Daniel will be fully aware that his hand is unlikely to be winning at this point. But his hand is too strong to fold. So should he call or raise? A key thing to consider is whether he'll get paid off by his opponents should he make his flush. The size of Bonyadi's raise suggests that he's very strong. Plus, just calling allows him to get away from the hand should he not complete his draw. Daniel decides this is the best option and just calls the raise. Dario quickly folds, realising he's way behind in the hand, and we see a turn card. The turn brings the 7 of clubs, giving Negreanu the flush. Bonyadi bets 13,000, and Negreanu moves all in. Bonyadi feels he's committed too many chips to the pot, and his hand is too strong to fold, so he calls, needing the board to pair. This doesn't happen, and Negreanu doubles up. Sometimes just calling with your draws can be very profitable. Before we head to a break, here's a question testing your ability to work out percentages. In the EPT London in Season 3, Vicky Corrin ran into the aces of Jonas Malander and found her tournament life on the line with a pair of 8s. It's obviously not a great situation to be in for Corrin, but in terms of percentage, what chance does Vicky have of staying in the tournament? Is it A, 5%, B, 20%, or C, 35%? Join us after the break to find out if she has a date with an 8. Welcome back. Before the break, we asked you what percentage chance Victoria Corrin had of winning with her 8s. The answer is B, 20%. Vicky was a 4-1 underdog. Oh dear, there's no way she'll come back from that. Eh? What do you mean she won the tournament?
Is there such a thing as home field advantage in poker? Can being familiar with a casino help your cause? Well, it certainly didn't do Vicky Corrin any harm in September 2006.
I won my EPT in the most special place on the whole of the international poker circuit. A couple of doors down from McDonald's, just next door to the bookies, in a room full of old gamblers in tweed jackets that smelt of cigarette smoke and hope. And there is no better place in the world to play poker.
The Vic Casino on Edgware Road was the making of Vicky Corrin, the poker player. She'd been playing there all her adult life and was entirely at home when the EPT rolled into town in September 2006.
Even while we were playing the tournament for this sort of $1 million prize, I could hear the tannoy. Then they were calling, they were calling Mike Wilner for the 1-1 game. I could hear the waitresses shouting, "Who ordered a lemon tea?" "Someone did. I've got a lemon tea. Who wanted the I'll have the lemon tea." I mean, it was just like a normal Thursday night in the Vic, except it wasn't.
No, it wasn't. 398 players entered. The biggest names in the business were there. The local girl couldn't win it, could she? It could have all been so different. Never good to put your tourney life on the line and see your opponent turn over aces.
Raising it up. And Vicky Corrin. Looks like she doesn't believe him. Oh, bad timing.
I was, at that time, I remember, trying to exploit two things. One, the fact that some people obviously were trying to hang on for the bubble and could be pushed around. Two, the fact that I was a girl. You know, to this day, and you've got to remember this was before a woman had even won the EPT, to this day, people think women don't bluff, they've got to have a hand. And I remember feeling, I'm not going to be scared of being knocked out, I'm not going to be scared of missing the bubble and missing the money, I'm going to be the fearless one here.
And it paid off.
Wow, there she goes, she got the trips.
She cracked Melander's aces to double up at a crucial point in the tournament. Good fortune was on her side. Good fortune and her feminine charms, of course.
Stop it. I don't think I flirted with Jonas Melander. He's a match. I mean, he's like, I don't want to take this the wrong way, but he looked like a little boy. Maybe not so much now, but he's a bit younger than me and looks very young. I don't think I would flirt with him. I do flirt at the table, but I tend to flirt with, like, grumpy old men. That's what I like.
Vicky marched to the final table, and there was a significant and genuine swell of support for her, even from the players she just knocked out.
I like to see her go on and win it, I really would.
There were so many things special about Vicky's victory. She was the first woman to ever win an EPT for one, but it was the atmosphere in the Vic Casino that night, the casino that Vicky had spent so long in, that was so unique.
You know, I genuinely love those people. They're like an extended family, the Vic players. They really are. And, you know, maybe it's naive of me because they're poker opponents, but I think it's real, the affection and friendship that you can form with people over years playing poker. If I could bottle something and keep it from that night, that's what it would be, that warmth.
The money, the trophy, the atmosphere. Enough to overwhelm everyone there.
Vicky Corrin wins the London EPT.
Natalie Pinkham went to interview me, and I couldn't really speak, and I was thinking, I had a voice in my head going, this is ridiculous, this is what you do. You know, these other people, all these brilliant poker players, okay, they struggle a bit with the interviews. You're meant to be a professional communicator. Give us some sound bites.
This is going to take days to sink in. You're the first female winner of an EPT event, and in London. This is staggering.
I know, it's amazing. It's in London, in my little home casino with all the Vic players. I can't really speak, but
it was so much to take in. I wasn't able to speak about it. I was just standing there saying.
And with that, Vicky Corrin became the first woman to win an EPT.
The world is full of women who would like to play poker and used to think anyway, it's not for me. It's something for men. It's combative, it's confrontational, it's even sleazy. And those women, I would very much like to think, would be able to look at me and say, oh, she does it. You know, I hope I seem like a fairly respectable person. And I would like women who are interested in poker to be able to look at me and think, okay, that world doesn't look so scary. If I think of it with her face on it, it's not scary at all.
Women in poker? Women can't play poker, can they? Some online players still use an old trick to have a woman's face as their avatar to make their opponents underestimate them. But times they are a-changing. Gone are the days when the only women you'd see on a poker floor were dealers or masseurs. These days, it's the women who are getting the massages. It's fair to say even that the girls are taking over.
Maybe 10 years ago, we wouldn't see maybe one woman around the table. And today we see a lot of them.
There's more coming each year, so that's good. And there's a lot of tough ones too, so that's good.
In the future, we'll have like 1 or 2 women per table, maybe.
But no matter how much the game has evolved, old stereotypes are hard to shake off.
Poker's a reflection of your own personality, and women are quite conservative, and that sometimes might go against.
They don't bluff as much, they don't play as aggressively. That's why women and men, you know, usually play a little bit differently.
Don't get too cocky, guys. Some of these poker queens are taking full advantage of their image.
It often gets you more action at the tables. People often underestimate you.
Actually, I find it harder to play against women than men. And maybe just because I've played against men more often, and I know how they see me.
I definitely like being a woman. I've never had any problems. I really enjoy it.
There are some male players that are taking notice, though. Even the great players can find sitting at a table with a woman daunting.
I rather don't have them at my table, because often they're more difficult than men.
Vanessa Russo, she is totally focused. It's not only playing good, the spirit is there.
The women who will play, they really got balls.
I personally hate playing poker with women because I feel like women read me like a book. Whether it was my ex-wife or whether it was some girl I'm on a date with, they always know what I got.
Women-only events are becoming more and more popular, but the last few years have seen a significant impact by female players. It all started with Vicky Corrin triumphing in the London main event of EPT Season 3. And less than 3 years later, German Sandra Naujoks took down the Dortmund leg of EPT Season 5. April 2010 was when things really started to heat up, as Vanessa Selbst came first in the NAPT Mogan Sun event, and Liv Bourret overcame 1,200-plus runners to win EPT San Remo. Pay close attention, boys. The girls are here to stay. You know what they say, can't live with them, can't bluff them off a flush draw with a 4-bet all-in. At least, that's how I think the saying goes. So hey, what's this? See the cards? It's a hidden draw. Get it? Hidden draw? What do you mean you don't know what a hidden draw is? Christian?
Sometimes it's quite obvious if a player is on a draw. Watch them closely. If they're thinking long and hard about your bet and then call, they could be drawing. In this tutorial, we'll show how more disguised draws can play out. A flop without draws is commonly referred to as a dry board. If you're holding 3-6 or ace-4, you are drawing to 4 cards to hit your straight. If you have 3-6, a 4 will give you the straight. If you have ace-4, you need a 3. In both of these hands, you need to hit one specific card value, so they're both gut shot draws. Like we told you earlier, we don't recommend that you call bets with gut shots. Drawing to 4 cards isn't a good situation to be in, regardless of how much is in the pot. One thing you can do with a gut shot is bet out. Why? Because there's always a chance that your opponent will fold. And on the rare occasion that you do hit, nobody will expect you to have it, so you can win a very nice pot.
You need nerves of steel to play poker, and to prove it, we combined a cheap toy and some bored poker players in a childish experiment. We gathered 5 of the game's most impenetrable, unflappable players to find out who was the coolest of the cucumbers. Meet the challengers. Andre Akari, the Iceman. Christoph de Mulder, the Ice Cream Man. Matthias de Mulder, Braveheart. Alex Gomez, The Rock. And Ruben Visser, Lethal Weapon 2. Bring on the electronic annihilation lightning shocker. When the music stops, the last to press their button gets a nasty 16-volt surprise. Who'll keep their nerve, who'll be the quickest, bravest, and who'll scream like a baby?
Okay guys, let's go.
Matthias the Braveheart takes the first hit.
How does that feel?
This time it's The Rock who gets turned over. The Iceman melted. Enter Lethal Weapon 2. And it's humiliation again for the Braveheart. Well, based on this display, not all poker players have nerves of steel, or live up to their nicknames. Except maybe for Ice Cream Man. No poker players were harmed in the making of this feature. Well, not seriously anyway.
12 shows down, and you should be feeling pretty confident about your game. Let's review what we've learned today. We looked at the different kind of draws you will find yourself with and how they should be played dependent on their strength. We explored an important weapon in any poker player's arsenal, the semi-bluff, when to use it and why it's so effective. And we looked at the rise of women in the game and found out what it meant for one leading lady to win a major title in her hometown.
To practice all you've picked up in the show today, go to PokerStars.com. Once at a table, play your draws in accordance with the advice given in the earlier tutorials. Also, don't be afraid to utilize the semi-bluff when the time feels right. It's a profitable move in the long run.
Here's what's coming up next time. It's the final show of the series, so we review the key areas we have previously covered, and we hand out all important advice for managing your bankroll. We try and experiment to see just how a hand could play out differently dependent on the player. The pro analysis section looks at what happens when two poker geniuses collide. Plus, we dig up a couple of horrendous bad beats from the archive for your twisted pleasure. Should be fun. Make sure you tune in.